South Africa just put AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on hold in the country. And the reason why they put it on hold was that data showed that it just wasn't very effective against the B.1.351 variant that was first identified in South Africa. And there have been some concerns about this particular variant. So South Africa has put AstraZeneca's COVID vaccine on hold. And then because it's not as effective, there were different studies from this, or different results from the study. One showed efficacy as low as 22%. Another was a lot better, showed efficacy of 60%, but it certainly raised some concerns in that country where this new variant is just sweeping. Most of the cases of COVID-19 in South Africa have this new variant, and so there's a real concern about AstraZeneca's vaccine. So now the latest news is that the country is moving forward with administering Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine to frontline healthcare workers, even though Johnson & Johnson's vaccine hasn't been approved in South Africa yet. So we have this situation where AstraZeneca's pain might be leading to Johnson & Johnson's gain. And so, obviously the question here is, how big of a problem is this for AstraZeneca? What might it mean, the decision mean for Johnson & Johnson and other countries? And from my perspective, I'll be looking forward to see what Brian's take is on this. But from my perspective, this obviously isn't good news for AstraZeneca, but it doesn't mean a death knell by any means. I think it's just a setback. AstraZeneca's vaccine is being given in the UK, and it's it's still a promising vaccine, but it's certainly a setback. Definitely good news for Johnson & Johnson that they think highly enough of its prospects against this new variant to go ahead and start administering it to healthcare workers even before it's approved or authorized in the country of South Africa. So that's obviously good news for J&J. All right, I think we have Brian with us. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. My computer decided that it was going to take its own sweet time this morning loading. So it was a good 15 minutes between when I turned it on and when I finally got into Zoom.
Murphy's Law strikes again, right?
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I had gone ahead and jumped into our big COVID story of this week, thus far anyway. It's one that I'm sure you've heard about. I'll repeat it for your benefit. I was just telling our viewers that South Africa has put AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on hold in that country because of low efficacy against this new variant that was first discovered in South Africa. Some of the results, Brian, was showing efficacy as low as 22%, although it was kind of all over the map. There was some results showing 60% efficacy. But at any rate, South Africa was concerned enough that they put that vaccine on hold, and they're even beginning to administer Johnson & Johnson's vaccine to frontline healthcare workers, even though the J&J vaccine isn't authorized or approved in the country yet. So I had started to give my take on it. I'm curious to see what your view is. How big of a problem do you think this is for AstraZeneca, and what could this mean over the bigger picture for Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not financially, it's not that big of a deal for AstraZeneca since they're not planning on making any money off of the vaccine. So if you're AstraZeneca shareholder, in the short term, it's not a big deal. In the long term, maybe they were going to make some money if there's boosters are required, and that could be a problem. Especially, obviously if it's not protecting against the variants, but also because it's an adenovirus-based vaccine, and there's likelihood that we develop antibodies to the adenovirus that results in, that delivers the DNA that's required to make the protein that gives you the immune response. So I think that the booster shots of AstraZeneca's, and for that matter, Johnson & Johnson's adenoviruses, are probably not going to work very well. And they're going to have to come up with a different strategy using different adenoviruses. They're not going to use the same adenovirus with a new DNA that covers the variants.
Now, Brian, I'm sure some of our viewers might be wondering, could this have any impact whatsoever on AstraZeneca's chances of getting authorization in the US? What do you think?
I mean, I think it probably depends on how worried the FDA is about the South African variant in the United States. And that'll be determined based on when they apply for authorization. So I think it's too early to tell, but I definitely think it's an issue for AstraZeneca and for the United States in terms of covering, getting enough people vaccinated as
Right.
quickly as possible.
And of course, you mentioned AstraZeneca isn't intending to make a profit from their vaccine right now. Johnson & Johnson's in the same boat, right? So they've said at least during the pandemic, they won't charge anything above their cost for their vaccine. But with J&J's vaccine at least showing to be somewhat more, at least relatively more effective against this South African variant, could that be good news for J&J over the long run, you think?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I'm leery of knowing whether that's actually true. I don't know that we have enough data to really know that for a fact.
Yeah, and the big thing to keep in mind with both of these companies is even if their vaccines are total commercial flops or huge commercial successes, it'll only be a you know small impact on these companies because of their huge revenue streams already. They have lots of other products, so they're insulated against any big failures, and any big successes won't necessarily be huge drivers for the stocks necessarily. I mean, you could see, possibly when Johnson Johnson said, let's say they win authorization later this month, perhaps you could see, maybe a jump for the stock, but it's not going to be a double-digit percentage gain, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. It's their revenue currently are so large that adding a billion or two or three is, and especially if it's a one-time benefit, is not going to move the revenue needle and the earnings needle in the long term.